There is a stillness to the Utah desert that convinces you nothing living wants to be there. The red rock stands so still it looks painted on. The silence has a weight to it, the kind that makes footsteps sound like an intrusion. Even the light behaves differently here, bouncing off sandstone in a way that makes everything look freshly built, untouched, almost too clean to hold anything dangerous. That stillness is the first lie the desert tells you. It wants you relaxed. It wants your guard down before you have even crossed into the canyon country, before you have even left the parking lot at the trailhead. Utah sells itself on that stillness, on the mighty 5 national parks and the salt flats and the alpine lakes above the Wasatch Front, and it sells that image honestly enough that most visitors never think to ask what else survives in a landscape built entirely around extremes. Because the truth underneath the postcard is that Utah is one of the most biologically layered states in the country, stacking desert floor, high plateau, and alpine peak within the space of a single afternoon's drive, and every one of those layers has its own residents, most of them older than the roads that now cut through their territory. Drive an hour outside almost any Utah city, and the climate itself seems to change its mind 3 or 4 times before you reach the trailhead. Sagebrush flats giving way to juniper, juniper giving way to aspen, aspen giving way to granite peaks still holding snow into summer. Each of those transitions is a border crossing for something that lives there, and almost none of it announces itself the way the guidebooks suggest it should. What follows are the animals sharing that layered landscape with you, counted down from the ones you might expect to the one almost nobody does. 11. The black bear. Utah's black bear population lives mostly in the forested mountains, the Wasatch, the Uintas, the high country around Zion and Bryce, and for most of the year they want nothing to do with people. What has changed is not the bear's temperament. It is the map of where people now camp, hike, and build. Cabin developments have crept steadily higher into the foothills over the past 2 decades, planting kitchens and trash cans directly inside what used to be undisturbed bear range. A bear that learns a cooler left on a picnic table means food will keep testing that theory long after the first successful raid. And wildlife officials in Utah have had to relocate or euthanize an increasing number of bears each year, specifically because a human, somewhere upstream, left food where it should not have been. The danger was never really about aggression. It was about proximity dressed up as convenience. Number 10. The Rocky Mountain ELK. Utah holds one of the largest elk populations in the country, and for most of the year, a bull elk grazing near a scenic overlook is little more than a photo opportunity. That changes completely during the fall rut, when testosterone rewires an animal that can weigh over 700 pounds into something with almost no patience left for anything that resembles a rival or a threat. Bulls have charged parked cars, mistaking their own reflection in tinted windows for a challenger. Hikers who wander too close to a cow elk during calving season in late spring face an entirely different kind of aggression, a protective one, equally capable of putting a grown adult on the ground. The elk is not hiding from you. It simply does not consider you significant enough to move out of your way, and that miscalculation runs in both directions. 9. The moose. Fewer people expect to encounter a moose in Utah than in Alaska or Maine, which is exactly what makes Utah's moose population so quietly dangerous. They favor the willow thickets and riparian corridors around Park City, the Uinta Mountains, and the high wetlands near Bear Lake, areas that overlap directly with some of the state's most popular hiking and mountain biking trails. A moose does not read as predatory the way a bear does, so hikers routinely misjudge the distance they need to keep, not realizing that a moose that feels cornered, especially a cow with a calf, can close 20 feet in under 2 seconds and deliver kicks powerful enough to break bones. More people are injured by moose in parts of the American West every year than by bears, largely because so few visitors think to be afraid of something that looks, at a glance, like an oversized deer. 8. The mountain lion. This is the animal Utah residents themselves keep bringing up unprompted, correcting outsiders who assume the state's wildest danger is a rattlesnake, insisting on the cougar instead, and the correction is fair. Mountain lion sightings along the Wasatch Front have climbed steadily as suburban development pushes further into canyon terrain, placing backyards, green belts, and popular running trails directly inside established cougar range. These are ambush predators built for silence, capable of shadowing a jogger for the better part of a mile without ever being noticed, and Utah wildlife officials have had to issue trail closures with increasing frequency after confirmed sightings near residential neighborhoods. The mountain lion does not announce itself. Its entire hunting strategy depends on you never knowing it was there until it decides otherwise. And for the overwhelming majority of encounters, that decision is simply to let you pass unbothered while it watches from cover you will never spot. Utah's own Division of Wildlife Resources has said as much directly that for every confirmed cougar sighting reported by a hiker, there are almost certainly dozens of unreported passes where the animal simply chose not to be seen at all, which means the trail you hiked without incident may never have been as empty as it felt. 7. The American bison. Antelope Island, sitting out in the Great Salt Lake and connected to the mainland by a narrow causeway, is home to one of the oldest free-roaming bison herds in the country, and it draws visitors specifically because the animals look calm, almost domesticated, grazing along the roadside as cars slow down for photographs. That calm is deceptive. A bison can weigh close to 2,000 pounds and accelerate to speeds that outrun a human easily. And every single year, somewhere in the American West, a visitor is gored or trampled after approaching one for a closer picture, mistaking its stillness for tameness. Park rangers on Antelope Island repeat the same warning constantly, that a bison giving no visible sign of aggression can still close the distance and attack within seconds, because unlike most predators, a bison does not need to build up to violence. It simply decides, and then it is already moving. 6. The Great Basin rattlesnake. Utah is home to several rattlesnake species, but the Great Basin rattlesnake is the one most likely to end up in a backyard, a woodpile, or beneath a rock along a well-traveled desert trail, precisely because its range overlaps so thoroughly with the areas where people actually live and hike. Its coloring mimics the sandy, mottled ground so closely that most bites happen, not because the snake struck out of aggression, but because someone placed a hand or a foot within range without ever registering that the rock formation in front of them was partially alive. The venom is hemotoxic, breaking down tissue and blood cells rather than attacking the nervous system, which means a bite left untreated does not kill quickly so much as it destroys steadily. And every hiking season, Utah hospitals treat a predictable handful of bites from people who insist they checked the ground before they sat down. 5. The Gila monster. Utah sits at the very northern edge of this animal's range, confined mostly to the red rock country of the southwest corner of the state, which is exactly why so few residents even know it exists here. It is one of only 2 venomous lizard species native to North America, thick-bodied, strikingly patterned in black and orange, and deceptively slow-moving, which leads people to assume it poses little threat. The danger is not speed, it is grip. A Gila monster that bites does not release quickly, instead working its venom deeper through a chewing motion that can last for several minutes, and the venom itself causes intense pain, dramatic swelling, and a documented drop in blood pressure, severe enough to send victims into shock. Encounters remain rare simply because the lizard spends most of its life underground. But the handful of documented Utah bites share the same detail every time, a hiker reaching toward a rock crevice without checking what already lived inside it. Number 4. The black widow spider. Every outbuilding, woodpile, and undisturbed garage corner in Utah is potential black widow territory, and the spider's preference for exactly those overlooked spaces is what keeps bite counts steady year after year. The female's venom is roughly 15 times more potent by volume than a rattlesnake's, though the tiny amount she injects means bites are rarely fatal to a healthy adult. What they are, reliably, is agonizing, producing muscle rigidity, cramping, and waves of pain that radiate outward from the bite site for days. Utah's dry climate and abundance of undisturbed structures, sheds, crawl spaces, stacked firewood, gives the Black Widow exactly the stable, low-traffic environment it favors, and most victims never see the spider that bit them, only the aftermath. The bite itself often produces 2 faint puncture marks, so small they are mistaken for a pinprick, which means the real warning sign is rarely the wound, but the cramping that follows an hour or 2 later, radiating from the abdomen outward in a way that has sent more than one otherwise healthy adult to a Utah emergency room convinced they were having a heart attack. 3. The scorpion. Southern Utah's desert reaches share enough climate and terrain with northern Arizona that the same scorpion species found there, including the notably potent bark scorpion, extend their range into Utah's border counties. Scorpions hunt at night and spend daylight hours tucked into shoes, folded towels, and bedding left on the ground, which is exactly how most stings happen, a bare foot meeting a scorpion that had simply been looking for shade. The sting itself delivers a sharp, immediate pain, often compared to a hot needle, and in a small percentage of cases, particularly in children or those with allergic sensitivity, symptoms escalate to numbness, difficulty breathing, or muscle spasms severe enough to require hospital treatment. It is a small animal with an outsized capacity to end a desert camping trip early. 2. The tick. Utah's higher elevations, the same forested slopes that draw hikers escaping summer heat, are also prime tick habitat, and the danger they carry rarely announces itself the way a bite or a sting does. A tick attaches cuwitely, often in a spot the hiker never checks, behind a knee, along the hairline, at the base of the neck, and can remain feeding for hours or days before being noticed at all. Utah has recorded cases of Rocky Mountain spotted fever and, more rarely, tick paralysis, a condition where a neurotoxin in the tick's saliva gradually shuts down muscle function until the tick is removed, at which point recovery is often surprisingly fast. The tick's danger has nothing to do with force or speed. It depends entirely on being overlooked, on the assumption that a threat this small could not possibly be worth checking for. And now the one animal almost nobody on that trail is thinking about at all. Number 1 is the deer moose. It does not look like a threat. It looks like exactly what it is, a small, soft-eyed rodent no bigger than a thumb, common across nearly every elevation in Utah, from desert floor to alpine meadow, nesting in wood piles, cabin walls, storage sheds, and the crawl spaces beneath vacation rentals scattered through the mountains. Hikers walk past deer mouse burrows constantly without a second glance. Campers sweep mouse droppings out of a cabin before bed without thinking twice. And that is precisely the problem, because the deer mouse carries a virus that does not require a bite, a sting, or even direct contact to reach a person. It requires only air. The virus is called Hantavirus, and in Utah and the surrounding Four Corners region, it has a documented history that predates most of the state's tourism marketing by decades. The virus lives in the saliva, urine, and droppings of infected deer mice, and when those dried droppings are disturbed, swept, vacuumed, or even just shuffled underfoot in an enclosed space like a cabin, shed, or storage unit, the virus becomes airborne in a fine dust that a person can inhale without ever realizing it happened. There is no bite mark to notice, no puncture wound, no moment of pain that tells you something has gone wrong. The exposure is invisible, and by the time symptoms appear, days or even weeks later, most people no longer connect them to the quiet cabin cleanup or the dusty tool shed where the actual danger occurred. Early symptoms mimic ordinary flu, fever, fatigue, muscle aches, the kind of illness most people wait out at home rather than treat as an emergency. That waiting is what makes hantavirus so dangerous. The infection can progress rapidly from flu-like symptoms into hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, a condition in which the lungs begin filling with fluid, and once that progression begins, it can move from first symptoms to respiratory failure in a matter of days. Utah has recorded confirmed hantavirus cases regularly enough that state health officials issue seasonal advisories specifically warning residents and visitors about cleaning enclosed spaces where deer mice have nested, cabins left closed over winter, sheds, cellars, even parked vehicles that sat unused for months. The advice is always the same: ventilate before you clean, Never sweep or vacuum dry droppings, wear a mask, spray the area down first so the particles cannot become airborne at all. It is advice built entirely around a threat that leaves no visible trace of itself until it is already inside you. That is the real shape of the thesis this whole list has been building toward. Utah's desert stillness is not a lie exactly. The land really does look calm, static, almost sculptural in its silence. And for the animals people actually watch for, the bears, the cougars, the rattlesnakes coiled in the shade of a rock, that watchfulness genuinely helps. But the deer mouse was never hiding from anyone. It has been living in plain sight the entire time, in the woodpile beside the cabin, in the shed nobody has opened since last autumn, small enough and familiar enough that no one ever thought to be careful around it. The mountain lion teaches you to look up the trail. The rattlesnake teaches you to watch where you step. The deer mouse teaches you something quieter and harder to prepare for, that the most patient danger in a landscape built on stillness is the one so small and so ordinary that watching for it never even occurred to you. Utah has spent generations selling the desert as a place defined by its emptiness, by wide open silence, and nothing standing between you and the horizon. And in a strange way, that is exactly what makes the deer mouse so easy to overlook. Emptiness invites carelessness. It tells you there is nothing here to be careful about. And the desert has never once objected to being misunderstood that way, because the misunderstanding has always worked entirely in its favor. If you found this fascinating, hit subscribe for more stories like